Please adjust the volume of your audio system so that this message comes in clearly. This is the left speaker. This is the right speaker. Thank you.
And now, boys and girls,
You are listening to the UsVsFilm podcast.
Hello and welcome to the UsVsFilm podcast, episode number 94. Later on in the show, we'll review Richard Linklater's Boyhood. We'll also take a look at some of this week's Blu-ray and DVD releases.
We'll be talking to David Schendel about his documentary, The Comedy Club.
And last but not least, what's been happening in Hollywood. My name's Blaise Odell.
I'm James Rios.
And I'm Victoria Negre.
It's now time to meet the filmmaker. This week we are talking to David Schendel. He is the director of the upcoming film, The Comedy Club. How you doing, David?
Very good. Thanks, James.
Yeah, of course. So for our audience, can you tell me a little about yourself and also your documentary, The Comedy Club?
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, for me, I've been an independent filmmaker since I was about 12 years old. I made my first film when I was 12. It was a cowboy and Indian film, believe it or not.
Awesome.
Shot it on Super 8. So I've been making films for a while. My last documentary was entitled Yank Tanks, and that was all about the classic American cars in Cuba. It was actually the first film made in Cuba since the embargo went up in 1959. First film made by an American, I should say, in Cuba. And that had really good play. It won a bunch of awards. It screened internationally. I went to a lot of film festivals, played on PBS nationwide, and on the Sundance Channel. So we were real happy about that. And then, funny enough, my wife, who didn't see me for about 2 years, said, maybe you could make a film a little bit closer to home.
Oh, yeah.
And quite literally, I was having a cup of coffee with a comedian friend of mine, Howard Meehan, one of the Meehan brothers, and he said, oh, did you know that Cobb's Comedy Club moved? And I said, no, really? And he said, yeah, it's right around the corner. Let's go check it out. So we walked in, and I met the owner of the club, Tom Sawyer, and that really is his name.
Yeah.
and just thought, oh my God, this is an incredible story. Nobody knows this story about this guy and his little club that launched the careers of all these famous comics. I mean, the list goes on and on. Just a short list would be Ellen DeGeneres, Jim Carrey, Bobcat Goldthwait, Dana Carvey, Bill Maher, Kevin Nealon, Kevin Pollak, Paula Poundstone, Arj Barker, W. Kamau Bell. I mean, it boggles the mind how many people this guy nurtured and gave feedback to, and pretty much made into headliners. A lot of these guys during the interviews said, yeah, Cobb's Comedy Club was the first place that ever put my name on a marquee. And I thought, wow, this is a good story, because as a filmmaker, I like to take people where they've never been before, which is like, the auto shops in Cuba or backstage at an independent comedy club, that kind of stuff.
So, as someone from and currently living in the Bay Area, I'm extremely sad to say that I had never heard of Cobb's Comedy Club, but it looks like I really missed out, and that it made as you're saying, a huge difference in many people's lives. But personally, how big of an impact did it have on you to make a documentary on the history behind this club?
Well, it was an interesting, and I mean, we're still in this process of making it, but I mean, it's a really interesting story how this, I thought what we were going to make was this joyous celebration of this club's reopening in a bigger location, because, they moved from the Cannery here in Fisherman's Wharf, and that club was 250 seats, and then they moved it was damaged by fire, so they had to move, and they moved it into this huge space, which used to be the old Wolfgang's rock music club, and on Columbus Street, and that's 450 seats, so they're almost doubling their size. And so, the way it was made out to be was this is going to be this huge reopening, and all these guys are going to come back, and it's going to be a huge party and big success, and almost the day after the opening night weekend, I noticed that Tom Sawyer was very depressed, and I couldn't figure out why, and it slowly dawned on me that nobody really came back to kind of celebrate the reopening of the club, except for Bob Saget and Mark Pitta and some of the guys he had on stage.
Yeah.
But some of his bigger friends didn't show up, and And he was kind of worried even at that point. He started getting worried about, wow, maybe, I moved into too big of a club. And as a filmmaker, you smell the story, you know that there's more there that you need to investigate.
Yeah.
And I realized that the story wasn't just about the opening of this club. It really was about, was this club going to be even able to survive?
Mm-hmm.
So the process for it as a filmmaker took on a much different meaning, and it ended up taking a lot longer because, of course, the arc of the club and Tom Sawyer needed to be completed before I could finish the film. And I'm not going to tell you how it ends because I don't want to spoil it.
Of course, yeah.
Obviously, I went through a lot with this guy. And so for me as a filmmaker, it was pretty intense. I mean, compared to my first feature film, Yank Tanks, which from idea to premiere, was like 2 years literally.
Mm-hmm.
And this one has taken a lot longer because obviously my subject is a living guy and he's a moving target and he's evolving along with the story.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, it's probably been the most intense thing I've ever been involved in my life.
So the film, from the sounds of it, it has a huge collaboration behind it. Like, how have you discovered members of your team, and how do you keep the relationship with them very strong during the making process of the movie?
Well, I mean, I've been really blessed to have some great investors who have brought us this far.
Mm-hmm.
And you find these people by obviously documentaries are not the big money makers that feature films are, and with stars in them and stuff. So really it comes down to a passion project and finding people who are as passionate about a subject as you are. And I was really blessed to, through the comedy community and also through my investors, to find people that, love San Francisco, love stand-up comedy, and really want this story to be told. And, maintaining relationships over a period of years is kind of tough. I mean, I know that I've had several, arguments, to put it lightly,
mm-hmm.
with my editor and my co-producer about, the direction of the film and where it should go. And, you just have to, keep it at a professional level and make sure that egos don't get involved and that, you're all kind of aiming for the same thing at the end of the line, which is a great film with a great narrative and very engaging story.
Mm-hmm. So would you say, was it more difficult to get started on this film or to keep going after you started? Like, was there a particular thing that happened that you had to conquer to do either of those?
Yeah, Yank Tanks was a lot more difficult to get started because of obviously the embargo, and I had to get a permit and all that stuff, to even work down there. Whereas this one was just like literally walk into the club.
Yeah.
I got the idea. The next day I was back there, talking to Tom Sawyer and saying, hey, I really would love to make a documentary about you reopening this new club. And then, it was about gaining their trust over a period of months. Well, actually, it was more like a month and a half. That, I wasn't doing like some kind of weird gotcha story and
right.
Wasn't going to, show people puking in the bathroom or anything like that. It's just, so yeah, I mean, I think the obstacle with the comedy club has been really getting people to trust you because, I mean, comedians are a different breed of cat, and they're very aware of their public image. They work very hard to create this persona of them, and they don't want to see that, changed or damaged by some kind of flagrant mistake by a filmmaker.
Yeah.
And so you have to gain people's trust, and it heralds back to these great rock and roll photographers of the 60s who were hanging out backstage with these guys while they were doing some illegal stuff, obviously, and and they never showed that. I mean, obviously they have photographs of it, like I'm sure Jim Marshall, who died recently, one of the greatest. Same thing. He had to earn their trust and say, hey, man, I'm not in this to make you look bad. I just want to record it for history. So once you get over that kind of obstacle with a subject, then it gets easier.
Awesome. So what was an important lesson that you've learned, so far making the comedy club, or, Yank Tanks, that had a positive effect on your movie?
Yank Tanks would have been the fact that on the last trip we went down there, we went 4 times to Cuba, And I had all this really cool stuff planned. Like they race the old cars, they do street racing, and they bet on it and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was going to film that, and I had a bunch of great shots to do, externals of the cars, just beautiful shots. Because up till then, I'd barely been doing interviews, and I wanted to get a lot of cool B-roll. Mm-hmm. Well, it rained pretty much the whole time I was there, and the guys would not race in the rain. Certainly, obviously, because it was so wet, it was extremely dangerous. Mm-hmm. So one of my friends said jokingly, "Well, you should go see a Santeria and have them do a ritual." Because they're really into that down there.
Yeah.
And maybe the rain will stop. Obviously being a rational human being, I don't, practice Santeria, but I thought, what the hell, man? Right? And I actually went and did it, and I paid the Santeria to give me a blessing for sun. Mm-hmm. And I won't go into details on the ritual. It was kind of bizarre. But believe it or not, the next day when we were out shooting exteriors, and it was raining, all of a sudden, the clouds parted. And I'm not kidding you when I describe it like the clouds parted.
Yeah.
They literally did. And the sun came down on Havana for like 2 hours. With just enough for us to get that little bit of B-roll that we needed to finish the film.
Perfect timing.
And then, boom, they slammed shut again and started raining. So, this is one thing I learned is that, never say never. Who knows, man? Mm-hmm. Who knows about that stuff? And I would say in the comedy club, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is never write the story before it's done.
Yeah.
Because as a filmmaker, if you have one idea in your head when you start filming and you stick to that idea throughout the whole thing, you're kind of handicapping yourself in a way. Mm-hmm. Because certainly, when you're dealing in documentaries, which aren't as scripted as narrative form, you kind of got to let the story happen. You got to investigate it. You got to go with the flow. And, if the story takes you here, you go there. If it takes you over here, you go over there. And you have to be very open, and you have to plan for that kind of flexibility. And I think that the Comedy Club has taught me that more than any other film ever will, is the idea that, hey man, sometimes stories take 10 years to make, mm-hmm. They don't just happen in 2 years like the first one did. So that's probably the lesson I would take away from this film.
Fantastic answer. Definitely looking forward to seeing it. So
cool.
To close us out, where can people find you online and also all the information about the Comedy Club?
One simple URL, thecomedyclubfilm.com. Mm-hmm. No spaces, thecomedyclubfilm.com. And I can be reached through email at david@thecomedyclubfilm.com. Everything's up there. That will also take you to the Indiegogo page, which we definitely need some support on right now. We just put up a new perk. It's a $15 perk, basically almost a pre-sale for the film. If you like the trailer, give us $15 and you'll be one of the first people to see the film. Digital download. So that kind of stuff would really support us, and obviously a lot of good karma knowing that you're helping out, with a film that's important to this art form. If you love stand-up comedy, if you love live performance at all, this is your film for sure.
You are listening to the UsVsFilm podcast.